It wasn't always pretty, but the Kansas City Chiefs are still 2-0, and they come away with a hard-fought and close victory over the Los Angeles Chargers on Thursday Night Football, 27-24. Welcome to the Chiefs Instant Reaction post-game show brought to you by Sports on 580. I am Brendan Dworzinski. He is Fulton Caster, and Fulton, man, it was stressful right down to the very end. It felt like the Chiefs had finally put it away, and then Justin Herbert, with about half of his ribs still functioning and not causing him great pain, he was able to lead the Chargers down the field, cut it to a one-score game. Chiefs recover the onside kick, and they hold on for the 2-0 record and the 27-24 victory. What was your overall big takeaway just a few minutes after a stressful Chiefs win over their division rivals?
The big thing for me in this one is a Chiefs defense that was much maligned for a lot of their play in the first half, and some of it deserved it, some of it, looking back on it, not so much. Made plays when it mattered the most. Yes, they gave up that touchdown there, coming up there on kind of that 4th and goal situation. Great throw by Herbert with what could be only half his ribs, and I think we are both being generous at that moment there. Outside of that, though, they made great plays. They got pressure on Herbert when it mattered. They made hits on him when it mattered most. Great job by Mike Dana on the hit that ended up getting Herbert injured briefly there. It was good to see, though, Herbert come back after one play. But then immediately the next play comes in. Frank Clark gets a hit on him as he barely gets the ball away. Chris Jones was wrecking plays up front. Anytime the defense needed to make a play in the second half, they did a great job to step up. And that's not even mentioning a fantastic play and pick six by Jalen Watson. First career pick for the rookie, ends up going 99 yards to the house. The biggest thing is this Chiefs defense was not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But when they needed to make a play, when they needed to step up and win this team the game, the Chiefs defense did something they did rarely, if at all, last year, and that was respond and find a way to get the win. Because this win, as much as there were some great plays by Patrick Mahomes in this game, this was heavily a defensive-led win for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, it was a very stressful game, not just because it got close and the Chargers had a chance, albeit a long shot chance at the end of the game, but it really didn't feel Chiefsy to me. I mean, Mahomes had his moments. I mean, the touchdown passes were special. The little underhand sidearm throw to Jerick McKinnon. You had the deep ball as well for the second touchdown to find Watson. But overall, he wasn't especially sharp, and I think that was largely because of the offensive line really having probably its worst day as a unit since the group was rebuilt going into the 2021 season. Special teams wasn't tremendous. You had Brian Cook committing multiple personal foul penalties on special teams. Not ever what you want to see. But in the end, the defense does come up. Jalen Watson, obviously, with the play of the game, getting that pick six, his first career interception, takes it back to the house. That was not a great throw by Herbert, but also not a great play by Gerald Everett, the tight end. Louis Riddick of ESPN made note of that on Twitter, said, hey, he was gassed after he had just had that big reception earlier in the drive. He's kind of fading away from the pass. Watson jumps in front of it, and that effectively ended the game. Same with the 52-yard run by Clyde Edwards-Helaire that eventually set up the Matt Amendola field goal. Those were the two plays that really put this game on ice. But I'm with you. The defense stepping up, and Chris Jones, to me, was the player of the game, no doubt. 2 sacks in the contest, knocked down a pass as well. On 580 Sports Talk Thursday, Dan Lucero said he was his big Chief pick, our player of the game pick. His was Chris Jones, and I think that was spot on. For what it's worth, mine was Travis Kelce, who wasn't bad and got 1 yard away from hitting anytime touchdown prop, but that's neither here nor there. You gambled on this game, and you were gambling in favor of the Chiefs and their players. Probably not your best night, and yes, in fact, that does include me. But beside the point, you still come away. You're still proud of this victory. On the offensive side of the ball, Fulton, because you just talked a lot about the defense, and rightfully so, who are the standout performers for you offensively? And I guess that could be positive standout or negative standout.
For me, Patrick Mahomes notwithstanding, because in these conversations, we always know Patrick Mahomes is going to make plays. He's going to be the leader and the orchestrator of a lot of these things. One of the big stands for me was Clyde Edwards-Helaire in moments, because he had some moments where his runs weren't great. He's going to had issues, but there were multiple runs tonight, mainly after catching the ball, where he got the ball in his hands and went forward and just absolutely outright refused to go down, particularly in that second half as well, where the Chiefs need to make some big plays. I think about it, they had that drive in there when they were going to go score their touchdown to go up at one point in that game and try and tie the game and make different plays and get things going. They were get back there. They weren't making a play. Patrick Mahomes just kind of gives it to Clyde Edwards-Helaire on kind of a half screen, half check down. He starts going forward. Derwin James, who is a great player, was perfectly in position to make a breakdown tackle. Clyde Edwards-Helaire simply ran him over and said, "You are not going to bring me down." He did great plays there. He did that multiple times off the passing game on that night. 8 runs on the ground, 12 total touches, over 100 yards of offense. And then, of course, the great 52-yard run there to try and ice the game and set up that field goal. A very funny-looking run because he ran with two hands on the football for about 20 yards there. But
playing it safe.
You got to keep it safe. You have to do amazing things there, and it's amazing to see. But that's something we have not seen. What we're seeing on Clyde Edwards-Helaire after 2 games is what rookie year Clyde Edwards-Helaire was through his first 3 games. Explosion when it's needed there. It's not top-end speed, but it's good enough, and breaking multiple tackles and being hard to bring down with the way he's built. It wasn't a flashy stat line, and he did not get in the end zone, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire made multiple plays to try and get things done for this team, and more importantly, when they needed chunk yards and someone to just simply be tough and go get yardage, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was that guy tonight.
Yeah, I don't think there was anyone to me that really stood out as wow. Like last week, we had a couple of wow players. Like Juju had a good day, and it wasn't even close to the best game. Travis Kelce was great. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was great. Patrick Mahomes was pretty much infallible in the game. This time around, Edwards-Helaire had a nice game. It wasn't great. It wasn't special, not flashy with the stat line, as you mentioned, but I thought it was good enough, and he went over 100 yards of total offense, 118 on 12 total touches, so he nearly averaged 10 yards every time he touched the ball, had 74 yards on the ground, which was his total number of yards from scrimmage last week. So yeah, that was a nice game. I thought Justin Watson, he obviously had the 41-yard touchdown reception. It was a good catch, and he was totally able to turn around J.C. Jackson, who I know is your boy, big J.C. Jackson fan on the other side of the screen from you right now. But in all seriousness, I thought he played a decent game. Honestly, and I don't say this all that often because I'm not a McCole guy, I thought McCole Hardman actually had a decent day. Only had 3 catches, tough through that injury, made a nice catch after that. I do want to get to the quarterback real quickly here. We've got a comment in on the Sports on 580 YouTube account from our guy Golt Cuts, who asks, do you think J.H., Justin Herbert, outplayed Mahomes? You could argue that, I think. I don't think Herbert was all great necessarily in the game. That's also something of a function of what the Chargers offense is. And I'm not a Joe Lombardi guy, Fulton. You know that. I am not.
I know that very well.
No, not a Joe Lombardi guy at all. I think they could open up the offense a whole lot more in Los Angeles and get more out of Herbert. But that being said, I thought he was okay. If you wanted to make that argument, sure. But I feel like there's also extenuating circumstances. Dan and I just had this discussion on the show the other day, in fact, about the comparison between football stats and baseball stats. And in baseball, you can have so many different stats and they can tell you so much and give you so much detail because when it gets right down to it at a granular level, it's one-on-one. It is pitcher versus batter. You can put different things like park factors and spin rate and where the ball's hit, how hard it hit, all that. But in the end, it's one-on-one. Football's not like that. You've got so many other things that are coming into play, like offensive line play, which I think played a huge role in why Mahomes did not have nearly as good of a game today. And I think that was surprising because we've seen this offensive line, even when they were going through the quote unquote growing pains period, they were so good last year to start things off and ended the year playing so well. They were so good last week too. And that leads me into my final question for you on our post-game show here, Fulton. Did you develop any new concerns about this team? Are you at all concerned about this offensive line, or can you chalk it up to just, hey, that Chargers defense and their front 5, really, when you factor in the 2 edge rushers in Mack and Bosa, has gotten a lot better over the course of the last year? Do you worry at all about, hey, Mahomes was a little bit off and he, whatever it might be? Do any of those things become new concerns for you, or are you pretty much feeling the same way? And in the end, it was just a hard-fought win over a good team?
For me, it's more of the latter there, being a hard-fought win over a good team, because it was disconcerting to see an offensive line that was touted by many, not just any of us here on the 580 Sports team. Many in the national media were touting this offensive line as one of, if not the best unit in football. And to be completely frank, they were manhandled by the Chargers on the defensive line tonight. Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa numerous times were making plays in the backfield or getting there and getting pressure. There was pressure up the interior. Kyle Van Noy had a great pressure to disrupt a third down because Creed Humphrey, for whatever reason, was completely off in an assignment on basically a single straight blitz, almost kind of up the A gap there. So I'm not going to overreact to this after one game because the larger body of work tells me the offensive line is good, everything will be fine, and this is a new Chargers defense they're facing for the first time. But I think it would be silly to not have at least a level of concern. But I think overall, you have to rest on the fact that normally this offensive line plays very well. Patrick Mahomes made some tremendous plays. And overall, there were a lot of pressures. And a lot of times, Mahomes had to get off his spot and had to be creative. There was only one sack given up by this offensive line tonight. So through all the pressure, through all the times that Mahomes get creative, through some of the run stuffs and other issues, they only got one sack. The team still found a way to win. If there's anything that's the most concern, it almost is play calling, because the Chiefs, there were numerous times through play design, I think, more than play calling or execution, where they were stuffed on inside runs. I made this note on my personal Twitter account at Fulton Caster earlier during the game. On the first drive of the game, they went with the Michael Burton inside zone handoff through the offset eye that they have run I couldn't even tell you how many times, and it almost always works for a first down. They ran it once in short yardage all game. Even when teams know it's coming, it has worked for Kansas City. It did all last season. The play calling when it comes to some of the things you could attribute to the offensive line, and maybe if there were some issues, is almost more concerning to me than the offensive line play itself. But overall, everyone has bad games. Andy Reid has bad games. Mahomes has bad games. The offensive line can have bad games. I will only be concerned if they go to Indianapolis next week and have these exact same issues against a very good interior defensive line for Indianapolis.
And that's a great point, because I wouldn't say that I'm concerned with anything new. I mean, it was a tough win against a good team. I've been saying the Chargers are going to be a wild card team this year. That is a good team that the Chiefs faced with an improved defense. And we actually spoke about this on 580 Sports Talk on Thursday, Fulton, when you joined us for Crosstalk, about how they have added pieces, the Chargers have, to their defensive front. Now, they might not be great players like Sebastian Joseph Day, but they're useful players. They've got a role they can fill. And I thought he was in the mix enough tonight as one example. And again, when you've got edge guys like Bosa, Joey Bosa specifically, and Khalil Mack, yeah, you're going to be able to create a lot of pressure. I think I was just more surprised and really jarred in a way that the interior of the offensive line was getting bullied so badly, because generally speaking, that should be the best part of the Chiefs line. When you've got Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, and Joe Thuney all shoulder to shoulder in the middle, that should be the strongest part of your unit. So I'm a little surprised that they struggled as much as they did with the interior pressure from the Chargers, but not enough for me to think, oh God, the sky is falling. Something is suddenly very wrong. I'm not there yet, and honestly nowhere close to there, but I definitely was surprised. That was my biggest negative surprise takeaway from the contest. We will be talking all about this 27-24 Chiefs win over the Chargers coming up on Thursday on 580 WIBW. Fulton and Jake Laban will have mic'd up with you from noon until 3. In fact, Fulton, it's just you flying solo tomorrow on the show with our guy Kyle Manthe. So that is coming up. That is something to look forward to on 580 WIBW tomorrow. And then myself and Dan Lucero will follow Fulton with another edition of 580 Sports Talk as we break down the contest. We'll talk to our guy Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com and get you full reaction from the Week 2 Chiefs win over the Chargers. But until then, for Fulton Caster, I'm Brendan Dworzynski. We appreciate you watching the Chiefs' instant reaction to a Week 2 win over the Los Angeles Chargers, 27-24. We'll talk to you next week when it is hopefully a celebration of a 3-0 start